Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. The European Union has transferred the first 34 million euros of a support package for Armenia after Russia imposed restrictions on a range of Armenian exports, from flowers and fruit to wine, brandy and mineral water. As the EU prepares additional trade relief and deeper market access measures, the story is increasingly about more than economics. It is becoming a test of whether Armenia can reduce its dependence on Russia and deepen its ties with Europe. Now, to discuss all this further and what it means, we're joined now by George Mchedlishvili, Associate Professor at European University in Tbilisi. Good to have you with us. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation.
So let's talk about money and all this. We have this support the EU has offered. 34 million has come through. It's out of 50 as a total one. But if we look at that, what's actually restricted by Russia, that the export, that's 420 million. So is this really, let's say, a strategic breakthrough, or is this just a stopgap giving Armenia more time?
Okay, so, and one has to say it is also part of a larger 270 million package of aid from the European Union over the years. Of course, today we have the uphill battle. Obviously, Armenia is still dangerously dependent on Russia for its export and import. Russia is still a major partner, but here we see the trend. And what is more importantly, strategically, yes, over short term, it will be painful. Well, no sugarcoating. Well, Armenia is in for harder times, but Russia is actually using its only significant leverage on Armenia. Well, we know that militarily Russia is bogged down in Ukraine, and fortunately, the military base in Gyumri, 100 kilometers from Yerevan, is pretty much like desolate. Well, it's like half empty or half full, depending on how you judge it. So, and also, Russia has its own share of economic troubles. Therefore, its leverage is weakening. Yes, it still has it. One also have to wait to so-called heavy artillery, which is natural gas. If Russia decides to negotiate the price for the subsidized price for natural gas, it will be really very painful for Armenia. But that's basically it. Yes, Armenia might have several harder years, but it will not be mortal. And most importantly, after that, well, Russia loses pretty much all its leverage and loses its remaining foothold in the South Caucasus.
Mm-hmm. Interesting points there. Also, as you said, it's an uphill battle for Armenia. Just curious about, you said Russia's pressure. I mean, we know that they've been pressuring Armenia. It's still, though, just because of proximity, physically proximity, it is just closer to Russia. But in terms of these import restrictions, what could Russia do next? I mean, you said that's the only lever it has. But what about energy? Are there any other economic levers that it can use against Armenia if it decides to do so?
Yes, economically. That's why Russia was so hell-bent on dragging Armenia to the Eurasian Economic Union. Prior to 2013, Armenia, when it is already on the way of signing the associated agreement with the European Union, was, well, had complementary not only international politics, but economy as well. But Russia dragged it into the Eurasian Economic Union and made it even more dependent. Now, well, Armenia started a very painful, well, actually, Russia started for Armenia a very painful process of renegotiation and realignment and pivot to Europe. It will take time, but that's pretty much all Russia has. Unfortunately, well, Russia also has been using ethnic groups living in Russian territory like as targets. Very unfortunately, Georgians know it firsthand when thousands of Georgians were deported. Azerbaijanis learned it a couple of years ago when the relations between Moscow and Baku deteriorated. Russia might still have used that leverage, but I think it is like more shaky because many Armenians are also ethnically Armenians are part of the Russian, I would say, kind of like bureaucracy. Therefore, it will be like more complicated. But still, Russia does possess a leverage because of proximity. But one good news, and it's very important, and again, Georgians know it as it is an advantage firsthand, Armenia still doesn't have the land border with Russia. If trade with the neighbors, the most, I would say, the neighbors with the longest borders, Azerbaijan and Turkey, start to restore, if the peace negotiations continue, and there is a now distinct possibility, unlike a few years ago, if border between Armenia and Turkey opens, this will be a real game changer, and Armenia will, well, breathe with relief, and it will end its isolation, and therefore end Russian leverage.
Mhm. At the same time, you also mentioned borders there, and I mean, even if the European Union wants to do more trade, and now we have this relief to some extent, but even as a market, I mean, the EU is a big one, but can it realistically ever replace Russia, which is very, very close by, and there's so many trade links with this, also this Eurasian Economic Association. Can that ever really be replaced, or at least quickly?
Well, I think at some point the membership of Armenia in the Eurasian European Union will be on the line, will be questioned, and Russia quickens it actually by its very inept, heavy-handed, arm-twisting policy. It actually approaches the data, and Armenia will reconsider, because we know that, well, proximity with the political economic proximity with the European Union, the process of integration, which Armenia started basically, it proclaimed it as a entry in the constitution. It decided actually to pursue its path. And it is incompatible with membership of the Eurasian European Union, Eurasian Economic Union. So the question will be raised at some point, and well, judging by how Russia behaves, it will be raised and it will be decided not in favor of Russia. So in the long term, of course, there will be relief, but Armenia still has to live through several hardy, difficult years. And again, economic difficulties could be further complicated by political ones. Russia still has a very extended network of its agents. Well, basically three political parties which were against Pashinyan had all close ties with Russia. So therefore, Russia still has a presence, and of course, it could be very carefully but firmly weeded out in Armenia from the political as well as the economic realm.
Yeah, and raising that question, as you said, closer ties to the European Union. We also have an incoming trip from the Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Kos, who's due to visit Armenia, I believe, at some point in July. What do you make of that trip? How significant is her? I mean, it's not just a commissioner of, let's say, defense or economy, it's the enlargement commissioner going. So what do you make of the visit?
This is a major political process, and it is, and I'm very happy how Armenia, as like friendly nation and the neighboring nation, that they have entered, they have actually set on this path. Well, of course, it is a long path. It is rather actually longer term. It's like a strategic vision of Armenia, but it might bring together, well, possibly and very hopefully the candidate status within like a year or two, visa-free travel with the European Union, and all these like benefits similar to DCFTA. So it is a long process, but hopefully Armenia will be on its path, and of course over time it will be the relief. So I very much hope, probably the very important time frame is 5 years, next election. If by next election in 5 years Armenia shows a brisk economic pace, economic progress, and people associated progress with closer ties with the European Union, then we will be able to say that finally Armenia won and Russia lost in, Europe won, Armenia won, and Russia lost in this in this part of the world. Again, we'll have to wait for several years. Now the trend, I believe it's positive. Well, Pashinyan in the parlance of Donald Trump has a number of cards, and I believe that he and Armenian nation will use these cards wisely.
All right, so you said still many hurdles to go through and overcome at the same time. Let's look also a little bit wider, another neighbor in the region, if I may, looking at Azerbaijan. This is also a complex relationship between these two countries as well. But also looking at what you make of this, because I think it was just last week, just a few days ago, you had Romanians actually create a strategic partnership, beginning of one, with Azerbaijan. But that same, let's say, level doesn't exist with Armenia. How does Azerbaijan generally fit into all this? I mean, also critical for gas supplies to the European Union. How is all this in play as well? What's the strategy there?
Armenia and Azerbaijan have different political landscape, like different political kind of like regimes. But Azerbaijan obviously is a key supplier and, well, supplier other than Russia, supplier of important like minerals and like fuels, fossil fuels, like for Europe. That's why Europe like needs it, and it is important. What is geopolitically very important, that after restoration of its independence, Azerbaijan follows the path of coming closer to Armenia. Most importantly, this is another leverage that Russia lost. For decades, Russia presented itself as the arbiter, trying to warm up ties with Baku against Yerevan, playing one or the vice versa, playing one country against the other. Now Russia doesn't have this important like privilege and foothold and influence. And we see that two countries and the leaders of the two countries and the leadership of the two countries behave very responsibly. Well, I believe that actually strategic ties of some European countries will come over time. Well, it will start from like Western Europe, it will move like to the Eastern Europe. So over time, but most importantly, we see that the current trend of this rapprochement between Armenia and Azerbaijan should continue. Today, there is a significant window of opportunity. I hope that window of opportunity will persist for years to come, and the countries should take advantage of the window of opportunity. We see that the visits of very important like key members of the cabinet of the leadership of Armenia, Azerbaijan, so the aide of the president, so the advisor of the president, the return visit of Armenian advisor to Azerbaijan will come soon. A number of experts and NGO representatives visited each other on several occasions. There is a constant like TV interviews and like YouTube interviews and actually talks between Armenia and Azerbaijan, something that was unimaginary 3-4 years ago. I think that the peace agreement and reaching peace between these two countries is not just around the corner, but like on the tracks. The countries are on the right track and they should pursue. And in this particular regard, I believe European Union and the United States might provide significant help to both countries to stoke this political will which is present today.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned the United States. Let me just catch one quick sentence of that, if I may. The significant ties with closer to Europe, but also how important is it with the United States? Just briefly before we finish.
I believe that so far, and I'm cautiously optimistic in this particular regard, given the unpredictability of the current U.S. leadership, like starting from the president himself, this is one of the areas where the U.S. so far has shown some persistent and interest. I mean, actually, this trip road and connecting South Caucasus, first of all, turning South Caucasus into the genuine region, unlike what it was until recently, and entwining it into this like bigger picture of East-West trade. This will be another game changer. And first of all, and most importantly, it will give this region the genuine economic independence, which is so crucial. Very unfortunately, situation in Iran, because kind of this road, this 42 kilometers road borders Iran, we still do not know. It's still not particularly stable. And obviously kind of like this reestablishment of peace and the measure of stability, like if Iran and in the Middle East, will be a significant help for this, for the trip of the trade routes to continue. I hope that the United States will show continued interest in this area.
All right. So as Russia restricts, Europe and the United States open up more for Armenia and the region. Thanks so much for that. Really appreciate it. George Mchedlishvili, professor at European University in Tbilisi. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.